We are, what day are we on? Wednesday? Thursday? Thursday already? Really? Holy smokes. Okay. So we left off yesterday talking about the archetypal wheel, which we're going to finish reading. Let's see. This chapter is called Examining Your Spiritual Real Estate with Pen. The questions. So, like I've said before, I'm just going to read this. I'm not on the channel wheel, but on my own. I am going to read through this book. The mail. You guys, I'm listening to your spirits called The Sacred Contracts by Karen Marilyn Mist, and my on memory. These experiences symbolic ways, such as how they introduced you. Started recognizing some of my life patterns. I noticed that I started to become more conscious. I can't believe I've been pretty much living my life pattern. It's crazy today because of some of the destruction that's happened in my life. If I was conscious of what was going on, probably half the tragic things that have happened to me wouldn't have happened. Let's see, the questions which affected my children. My unconsciousness affected my children in negative ways, one of them which is dead. That's a lesson nobody wants to learn. Nobody. I'm not saying it's my fault he's dead, but because I went through life so unconsciously, I made choices that affected his livelihood. I allowed people in my life who really could care less about me or my children. The questions that follow are designed to elicit your reflections on memories of your major experiences. They are meant to cause you to interpret these experiences in symbolic ways, such as how they introduced you to overall life patterns. As with all the exercises in this book, the more detailed you can be, drawing on your successes and failures, the challenges you faced, and the ones you ran away from, the better. Let your feelings and responses emerge from within. As you enter your answers in your journal, you should also record any imagery, dreams, or associations that come to mind, even if they don't seem to make sense. These questions are directed as much to your unconscious as to your conscious mind. The conscious mind often produces instant replies in one word or brief phrases, while the unconscious will give you impressions and images. If some of the questions baffle you the first time round, come back to them later. Often when you stop thinking about a question and trying to force an answer or image will present itself spontaneously. Please make a note of any answers, no matter when and where they pop into your mind. Answer all the questions for each archetype and house. What are my immediate associations with this archetype and the meaning of its house? Now that's, of course, if you've done the wheel, which I personally haven't done yet, but I'm just going to read through the book, like I've said. So in almost all cases, when you focus your attention on an archetype and the meaning of its house, you will get a rapid flow of intuitive perceptions, even before your conscious mind takes over and jogs your memory. Intuition thinking by a journalist named this Timeless David, and sends a story he broke stories that revealed the corrupt side of Castor's story wheel. His spellcaster type rules our relationship to the outside world, which rules mind, rules our mind here. But as we analyze more detail, the word ruthlessness, again, to consider that the spellcaster's voice had led him into a life influence, and why the need paid attention to making his he expresses his thoughts quite differently. Because although he still is dedicated to spell casting, he is spreading hope for how life could be rather than dread about how life is. And what specific experiences come to mind as I think of a partnership between this archetype and its house? I'm just going to read you of these. I don't want to overwhelm myself or people who are listening questions. One man, on discovering that his judge archetype had landed in his 11th house, which rules our relationships to the outside world, had a first impression that he was always judging everything in the outside world. He had originally chosen the judge because he had a lifelong regard for workings of the law, but he also found this archetype active in other areas of his life. I realize, he said, that everyone has opinions, but I am obsessive about my judgments. I find something to dislike in everyone, but I am now learning to curb that fault finding. When I started to work one-on-one with these archetypes, I saw that I am inclined to find fault with something or someone long before I find anything of value. I wonder now who might have become a dear friend were it not for my judgments, and what I could have experienced had I not judged it ahead of time to be meaningless. At the same time, I have had to examine the positive aspects of the judge, and I have learned that dismissing the judge entirely and disliking myself for being judgmental is inappropriate. I need to learn discernment. I need to release my desire to run the world as a courtroom with me presiding over the crowds and delivering sentences to those I consider criminals. It's up to me to keep my center when I am with people whom I would otherwise have condemned. Recently, for example, I met a person who had lived in an ashram for a few years. The old me would have immediately labeled that individual a religious fanatic. But in that moment, I decided to pursue a conversation about what had motivated him to choose that lifestyle and what he had gained from it. Instead of dismissing him, I learned something from him about spiritual dedication. This is a hard habit to break for me. However, as soon as the conversation was over, I immediately fell into criticizing every word he had spoken. I had to repeat the conversation in my mind. But when I did, I focused on why I was afraid of people like him, instead of reviewing what I thought was wrong with him. That represented a major change for me. Okay, so I'm going to read two more. What associations with relationships do I have with this archetype in this house? Noting that she had the saboteur archetype, third house, self-expression and siblings, one woman told me that as a middle child between two older and younger siblings, she was always working to maintain harmony in the family. I felt that the rivalry that existed with my siblings was always destroying or sabotaging what could have been a great family, she said. We had every opportunity to be close. We had great parents and great relatives, but one of my brothers and both of my sisters had what I called lousy chemistry. They were forever turning the household upside down with arguments and all sorts of destructive behavior. One time I actually yelled at them, "You are ruining this for no reason," and I had been aware of the saboteur. I would have said that they broke up the family as if they were on a guerrilla mission. So this archetype in that house makes a great deal of sense to me. And now, as an adult, I use that experience as a personal point of reference in that I no longer see myself as the one responsible for settling confrontational relationships between people. Getting in the middle of negative exchanges between people is an act of self-sabotage because I end up doing harm to my own relationships with everyone by getting in the crossfire. What issues of power come to mind as I review this archetype and its houses? You will have to ask yourself this question more than once because it requires, and I'm going to read the question again. Even though we don't have, or I don't, or probably none of the viewers do, an archetype, I haven't cast a wheel yet, but still, we're going over the questions first. What issue of power come to mind as I review this archetype and its house? You will have to ask yourself this question more than once because it requires serious excavation of your motives. Power issues have to do with control and its manifestation, as well as with ambition, values, generosity of spirit and self, and so much more. Every part of our lives involves some exchange of power. We either gain or lose power in everything we do, say, or think. Whether we are conscious or unconscious of our behavior, and we are usually more conscious of it than we care to admit. We intended to use power to gain advantages over ourselves. Jerry had the mother archetype in her second house, life values, and nothing was more important to her than being a mother. Her life was wrapped around caring for her children, and she believed that her role as the good mother afforded her the right and the power to determine her children's values. Jerry's lifelong desire to have a home and family influenced many of the decisions she had made from her earliest years. She knew the kind of man she would date and degree program, elementary education, that would allow her to have a job that would have the same vacation days as her own children. Her image of what makes a woman a good mother came from her mother and grandmother, who had passed on the importance of imparting high moral and ethical standards to one's children. But it wasn't enough for Jerry just to pass along a strict code of values. She wanted to ensure that her children would never stray far from her authority or outgrow their need for her, because then it would be difficult to maintain her control over them. She communicated messages of dependency to her children by saying things like, "Nobody will ever do this for you better than I do," and "Mother knows best," believing that she was acting in their best interests. She frequently asked her kids how they intended to survive as adults without her to guide them. Jerry's good mother image was more in keeping with the devouring or smothering mother, a shadow aspect of the mother archetype. Not only did Jerry devour or undermine her children's power, she also undermined her husband's strength by convincing him that she was better suited than he to take charge of the children. These tendencies grew out of control until a group of Jerry's close friends sat down with her one day and conducted a kind of intervention, telling her that her need to be the center of attention amounted to narcissism, and that her attempts to control everyone around her was threatening her relationship with her family and friends. After the intervention, Jerry examined other relationships that made her need to be seen as Jerry examined other relationships that made her need to be seen as invaluable and saw that she had a fear of not being needed and of being left behind. In order to heal her attachment to being needed, she looked at her house of values, second house, and examined the source of her desire to be of greatest value. As a result, As a result of these insights, Jerry initiated a personal practice that she called stepping outside of herself to view her interactions with others. Whenever she noticed that she was slipping into the pattern of craving attention, she immediately turned the camera on herself, examining her fear of being invisible to others. By calling her own attention to this pattern, little by little, Jerry was able to engage in relationships without the motivation to be seen as significant to everyone she interacted with. I'm going to read the archetype. Let's see, where did we leave off at? Lover. This archetype appears not only in those who are romantically inclined, but also in anyone who is passion and devotion. Music, gardening, Persian carpets, having a sense of unbridled and exaggerated affection or needlepoint. And the key is appreciation of someone or something that influences the organization of your life and environment. Although the lover is present in everyone's life to some degree, as a personal archetype, it needs to play a significant role in the overall design of your life and self-esteem, which is its strongest link to your psyche. The lover is connected to issues of self-esteem because this archetype is so strongly represented by one's physical appearance. Even if you have the lover archetype prominently in your psyche, you may repress this pattern out of lack of self-esteem, especially regarding your physical attractiveness. The shadow lover manifests as an exaggerated, obsessive passion that has a destructive effect on one's physical or mental health or self-esteem. Nicolas Cage in Moonstruck. Oh, that was such an old movie. Charles Denner in The Man Who Loved Women. Truffaut version. Ingrid Bergman and Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca. Jose Ferreira in Cyrano de Bergerac. Drama, Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. Poetry. Poetry, it's the first time poetry's been listed. Troilus and Cressida by Chaucer. My first car was a Cressida. Fiction, Stealing Heaven by Marion Mead. Fairy tales, The Princess and the Frog, Beauty and the Beast. Religion and myth, Pyramus and Thisbe, star-crossed Babylonian lovers described by Ovid who commit double suicide. Endymion in Greek myth, a shepherd boy and mortal lover of the moon goddess Selene. Hasuko, a Japanese girl who died of love for her betrothed, whom she had never seen. Freya, Norse goddess of love and fertility and symbol of sensuality, a lover of music, spring, flowers, and the elves. Guinevere and Lancelot. Although Guinevere was married to King Arthur and Lancelot was one of his favorite knights, they pursued an affair that led to the eventual undoing of the Round Table. Lover archetype. All right, that's it for today. I gotta go see my